You know, we put this panel together because we know this is a journey, right? The caregiving can be a journey, and it's the unexpected journey. This is not what we signed up for, right? And when our loved ones are first diagnosed with the disease, we can be faced with these conflicting emotions: sadness, grief, anger, and sometimes relief that we actually finally got a diagnosis and we know what's going on. How about anybody in the audience ever feel any of these emotions? Right? They kind of, they just run, they come. Sometimes we're laughing and sometimes we're in tears. So this journey can be extremely overwhelming. And we're oftentimes faced with the question of, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? What's going to happen next? And how am I going to cope with what happens? Who in the audience feels this way? Right, exactly. So we wanted to design a panel that kind of encompasses individuals that have gone through the journey to talk about a little bit about where they are and how they've coped with the many challenges faced with caring for somebody that has Alzheimer's disease. So I want to take a few minutes just to introduce everybody, if I can find my notes in order. So we're going to start with Dave. Dave's wife, Bonnie, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 3 years ago. So she's in the early stages of her journey. Both he and Bonnie attend Alzheimer's early stage support group. Dave, of course, attends a care partner group, and his wife, Bonnie, attends a group for the person that's diagnosed with dementia. They're both advocates for the association for the cause. And they've spoken to representatives in Sacramento. They have also talked to congressional representatives. And recently, Bonnie spoke at Alzheimer's fundraising event, correct? Yes. She does a lot of speaking. We keep her very, very active and very, very busy. Dave has so far been able to maintain many outside activities, so we applaud him for his ability to really take care of himself, right? Because you can't take care of somebody if you're not able to take care of yourself. So I'd like you to clap your hands for Dave. Next we have Sharon and Edmund. They've been married for 10 years. Raise your hands. 15 now. Where did I get 10 years? I just make up stuff. So 5 years, right, into the marriage. Sharon's mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at the age of 67. As an only child, the responsibility fell on her. And Edmund has been a tremendous amount of support throughout the entire journey. The ultimate goal was to help mom live independent, be safe as long as possible. And she came to the Alzheimer's Association seeking help and support in guiding her through the many different phases that she was going through in her journey. So she's here with her husband to kind of talk about how the disease has impacted their relationship and where she's at in her journey of caregiving. So if you could please welcome Sharon and Edmund. So Gwen, raise your hand, Gwen. She's been taking care of her husband for 7.5 years. Her husband was diagnosed in 2004 with younger onset Alzheimer's disease, so he was diagnosed under the age of 65. He was a professor, was not the primary breadwinner, but no,
he was the
primary breadwinner.
He was a doctor.
He was a doctor, yes. And Gwen, when he was diagnosed, he lost his job, and Gwen she became the sole breadwinner for the family. So she was a breadwinner for a family of 4, not making as much money as her husband did, so it's been a financial struggle. So her husband still lives at home with her, and her aunt moved up here from Los Angeles area and is helping her provide care for her husband while she continues to work and to keep him at home for as long as possible. So please welcome Gwen. And And so our last panel member is Leslie, and she was 32. We won't tell you how old she is now. When her mom, and a new mom to twin boys, when her mother was diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's disease at the age of 56. Leslie's mother was single, divorced, living alone, and Leslie's only sister lived out of state. So caregiving responsibilities fell on Leslie. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to being the primary caregiver when you have siblings or other family members that aren't available. So for 6 years until her mother's passing, Leslie managed her mom's care while raising her young family. And during this time, Leslie not only found the Alzheimer's Association, but she also found her voice. And she became an advocate for the association, meeting with legislators in Sacramento and DC to share her experience as a family caregiver. So please welcome Leslie. I lost my mic. No, I have my mic, but your mic. Oh, okay, Jennifer back there has a mic, but I will open it up to warm you up to asking questions. Please feel free to stand up, raise your hand, and the mic will come to you. But I'm going to start with Dave and ask him a question regarding your feelings around your wife was recently diagnosed with the disease. Can you talk a little bit about the diagnosis and what emotions came up for you and your decision to wait to tell your wife?
Bonnie was actually, I got the word on Christmas Eve 3 years ago. I got a phone call in the afternoon. As you might imagine, that was difficult for me. And I chose not to say anything, although if I remember right, I think I might have mentioned we have 2 boys, older boys. So I think I might have mentioned to them somewhere in the Christmas celebration, but I'm not sure, I can't remember. But I told Bonnie about 2 or 3 days later. And of course, when you get the diagnosis, for me it was almost a relief because I had noticed something for 18 months or so. And, wondering what in heaven's name is going on with my wife. And so then I understood, and then we could really get started to try to figure out what to do and, join support groups, go to the other doctors, get a second opinion, get into clinical trials, and we've done all of that. And so for me, it was a kind of a call to action, I guess, to say, okay, now we know what it is. Now let's figure out what to do next and how to deal with it. So, and now we've been in for three years, and support groups. I mean, I can't say enough for the support that both Bonnie and I get from the support groups. It's just amazing.
I guess my other question, Dave, is that sometimes when we're first diagnosed with a disease, specifically Alzheimer's disease, that sometimes it can be easier not to tell people about the diagnosis for fear of how they would react. So I'm curious, what brought you and Bonnie along in being able to talk about the diagnosis to others?
I have a very amazing wife. She tells everybody. And I was telling a story earlier. We have a little Shih Tzu dog, and we put a vest on him, and he's now a service dog. He's her service dog. He's her companion. And every so often we take him places and take him into grocery stores or whatever, and people stop and say, "Oh, what a cute little dog. What kind of service is he?" And Bonnie says, "Oh, I have Alzheimer's, and he's my companion." And so, and he is. He really is her companion. He stays with her all the time and goes to sleep on her lap, and he is amazing. He really is a comfort to her. But she is very open. We have a wonderful family that supports the whole issue. Our youngest son goes to all the doctor visits with us and makes sure that I'm asking the right questions and everything. And our oldest son is a physical therapist, so he's involved also. And we have a wonderful church community, and we have a lot of very good friends who all understand and all help. So it makes my job so much easier when my wife is open about her disease and can talk about it.
So it sounds, you mentioned that you got the diagnosis, you got the call from the doctor. I'm looking at the back of your heads, which are beautiful, beautiful back of heads. It sounds like the process in receiving the diagnosis went fairly smoothly. There wasn't any calls of, well, we don't know, and back and forth.
No, I knew there was something, an issue. I mean, I know 18 months before, she was always the navigator in our family, and I was the driver, and she read the map and told me where to go as I was driving. And we were up in Seattle, and I asked her, okay, we want to go over there, and we're here, and she couldn't help me. She couldn't say, and I kind of go, oh, what's happening, and that, so I had to pull over, figure out where we were going to go, and I had to do it myself. But that was the first indication. So, and then during the next 18 months, I started to see other things, and so that's how we got to the diagnosis. So it was not. It was a surprise to me, but it wasn't in that I knew something was wrong. So it was, I guess, as you said earlier, it was kind of a relief.
Just one more question. We're picking on Dave. Because it's been 3 years since the diagnosis, and maybe 4 years since you kind of noticed the changes in her. And for many people in that early stage of the disease, they can remain independent for quite some time with losses here and there. I'm curious, have you thought about the future, planning for the future, providing care for her as well as yourself?
I haven't gotten there yet. I think still she's got quite a few years left at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that will be quite a few years. Although the support group is obviously very supportive and helping others in our group decide where to go and which home to move into. So I suspect when the time comes, I'll be calling on those people to help. But on the other hand, I mean, even yesterday, I need to talk to Alex, because Alex is going to have this little conversation with her next Wednesday. She came home, and first time ever in 20 years, she couldn't turn off the alarm. And so the alarm went off, and all our neighbors and the alarm company called me and called both of my sons, and that's the first time that's happened. So that's another step.
Another loss.
Every little step just kind of tears at your heart. And that was another step for me yesterday. And so it's hard.
It's hard for the things that they lose, and
That's
right.
Things
that we take for granted are huge things when they're lost.
And she's staying home today, but I did arrange for some friends to come in and visit her.
Great. Just kind of on the track of planning for the future, Sharon and Edmund, I know that we've worked a lot about preparing for the future. I've known you since I've been with the association, actually, probably 2 weeks since I was employed with the association. So I know that for you, it took some steps to get where Mom is at right now. I was wondering if you could talk about how you made the decisions along the way to where Mom's at today.
Okay, my mom is at my mom's at a skilled nursing home at this point. My husband and I kept her at home with us as long as we could, but we needed to go back to work. And she was becoming pretty difficult to deal with. She's very feisty, that's the word I use for her. So, and I felt that I'd done as much as I could do. I wanted her to have the best of care. And she could no longer even stay in the daycare because she was beating everybody up. So we just couldn't handle it anymore. So I did a lot of research. I visited about 25 different facilities. I went on the websites and looked at their background history, their employee history, their longevity and how long they stay. I did all this kind of research for months before I made the final decision of who I was going to actually go visit. My husband and I actually whittled down to 5 facilities before I drug him around with me. But he was happy to go, and he's a critical eye. And it's wonderful. You can look at a facility and it's clean, it's beautiful, it looks like a lot of fun. But when you look behind the scenes, they've got 60 deficiencies. They've got a turnover that's, every day they're higher staff. It has turnover. So that's not the place you want your loved one to go. You really have to look at the background. So after we narrowed it down to 5, we narrowed it down to 2. And my mom was pretty far along where she really wasn't going to realize where she was anyway. So I went to this facility, and I'd heard all these rumors about when you put them in a facility, leave them there, and you don't see them for 30 days. So I was kind of stressed about that because I'm an only child, and I did not want to be separated from my mom in that way. But when I went to this facility, they made it so easy. They said, no, you can stay, you can spend the night if you want to, and come every day, every minute if you want to. And I did. I did. But they were very accommodating. They never once made me feel like I was harassing them, which I probably was. And my mom melted right into the scene, and they were very loving and caring. Now I want to take a little back step, and you didn't ask this question, but you may, that when my mom was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I was 5 years into my marriage with my husband, and I'm a very independent person. I've been divorced for 13 years, and it was really hard to give up that freedom for such a wonderful person. I just had to do that. But when we came across this challenge with my mom, I thought, I don't want to burden him. I'm just going to divorce him. I'll go and take my mom, and me and my mom will go and live in our own place, and I would take care of her, and I won't burden him with this. And it was actually at a group session. I think Rhonda's here. She might have been there when I talked about it. But they said, no, your husband is your rock. And also, the Alzheimer's Society was very supportive as well. And they said, no, you've got to see this through, and you're going to need someone to pull you through. And my husband, too, said, I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together. So I didn't have a choice, but we had hugged on too long. Thank you. So that's kind of the background of making the decision to do it, making the decision to do it together, and then actually putting her in the facility, which she's doing very well. Yes.
Tell what you said in the meeting just a few minutes ago about your mother in the meeting.
Which one? About
the home meeting.
About the what?
The home meeting.
I'm sorry.
The home meeting.
The home meeting. Oh, yes. How we got to the place where my mother, like I said, is very feisty. She'd hit you in a minute. And when one of the signs we knew something was going on, she had decked a bus driver and with an umbrella. Here behind bars, Alzheimer's patient arrested. So we had, who was it who came to sit with us?
It was a Family Caregiver Alliance. And, well, just to back up from there, and I just want to say that that when it's not your mother, it's a different story. It's really challenging to be in a situation where you're giving some guidance about, this behavior is different now, and these activities don't appear to be along the lines of the way your mother used to conduct her affairs and that sort of thing. And so, you know, this whole initial denial part is really, really tough when you're in a couple, because it's like, don't be critical of my mother. but your mother's overdrawing her account every day. You know, well, she's associating with individuals that she wouldn't do before, and she was immaculately groomed at all times, and now that appears to be slipping. These sorts of things. And so in the position that I'm in, you know, the amount of tact that you have to have.
I'm pretty feisty too.
Take all the umbrellas out of the house.
You might have guessed. You know, is a whole nother story. But it did happen that we were able to say, you know, something's not right here. And it was as a result of the good people at the Family Caregivers Alliance that came and did the evaluation at our home, and they just really knew how to relate to Mom in the right way. You know, not make her feel like she was being interrogated or something along those lines. Because she had a you know, sort of a paranoia meter that was pretty high. You know, so if you approached her in certain ways, you really weren't going to get a good reception. And she can curse like a sailor, and I was telling somebody back there, she's got as good right cross and a left hook as Muhammad Ali. So you really wanted to be careful. So, but yes.
I exactly know. I know Nyla because she used to come to Alzheimer's service.
Yes.
I know how feisty she was. I know exactly what you mean. I think the bus driver that she did took was one of our bus drivers.
You have a question?
Yes. How do you deal with the support of your wife, and then who do you turn to for your personal support? Because what I find very hard is that we support our wives, and then we're left on an island, so to speak, and there's no one to support us. You know, my wife called me, can you go buy and bring my mom some food? You know, and I go buy her some food. Can you do this later on? Can you do this? Can you do that? And before long, I'm running back and forth, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, I gotta go to work here. So our support system, so how do you deal with that? How do you keep yourself? Because I find it very difficult.
Yeah, you make a great point. I think that you know, the Hillary Clinton said it takes a village. I think it takes at least a village to deal with an Alzheimer's person with cognitive impairment. And you and your wife cannot do it by yourself. And if you attempt to you know, do it out of whatever, you know, goodness of your heart, and some of us have these, you know, you don't air your dirty laundry, you don't allow people to get in your business, you know, some of us are well-meaning in having that be the way that we behave. But for us, the only way that we survived it, and there were periods of time where I wasn't real sure where we were going to, quite frankly, was because we did get the help that the Alzheimer's Association, the groups that we had participated in, and the like. And so some of these day-to-day chores and tasks that you're describing, you can begin to have some way to delegate some of that, so that you're not always on call 24/7. Because if that happens over an extended period, I don't care how strong any of us is, you can't bear up under that. So that's what I would suggest, is that, you know, perhaps there are ways that, you know, food can be brought to your mother-in-law on a regular basis, and you don't have to be the one who's, you know, the gopher all the time, and that sort of thing. And then having a real conversation with your wife, as I have on many occasions, saying, you know, we can't keep doing this. This is breaking us up. You know, I know you love your mother so much, but you know, if we continue to behave this way, we're not going to make it. Yes.
did it hurt you when you finally decided, both of you decided, hey, we gotta put her in a nursing home? Was it 2 years, 3 years into, how long was it, and was it a painful decision?
Maybe
Well-
you can talk about kind of where she was at.
Sure.
And the stages and level of care that were provided.
Yeah, in the very beginning, she resisted mightily. She owned her own home. She worked and all these things. But over time, every one of those things started being taken away from her simply because she couldn't do them any longer. However, we didn't have, Sharon did have to go eventually and get a conservatorship so she could get a hold of her finances. She didn't want that to happen either. And so at some point we did get her into a senior building. It wasn't a building that had any services really. It was just that it was subsidized housing. And for, what was it, about 3 years?
She was obsessed.
Yeah, well, yeah. For that long, she was able to live semi-independently.
For about 6 years.
For 6 years.
For 6 years.
But during that time, again, providing services for her, as she lost the ability to do certain things, like cooking, I would cook for her, prepare meals, and put them in the refrigerator, so all she would have to do is pull it out and eat. And then we get to the stage where I'd go back and the food hadn't been touched, or maybe it was up in the cupboard mildewing or whatever. Then I thought, okay, I had to do another strategy to make sure that she ate. So each stage I would counter with adding something else and telling little fiblets every now and then too. With, well, you know, we're going to go out to dinner tonight, but secretly putting the food there. Oh, they delivered it, and making sure she's eating it, calling her every day to make sure she's taking her pills. So those different stages, I just went right along and made a support system for her.
Right, but what happened that really changed everything for us, we were at a family reunion over in Kansas. And we got a phone call that said, well, she had wandered off, and she had fortunately gotten to a school up in the hills of Oakland, and some kind janitor had taken her in, and he recognized right away what was going on. And so he ended up getting the police to take her to Highland Hospital. She wasn't injured or hurt or anything, but clearly she had no idea where she was.
It was 10 o'clock at night, so that's what scared me. So I knew then she couldn't live by herself.
So that moment that you're describing, where Sharon says, you know what, she's going to have to come home and live with us, that was a very challenging moment.
Yeah, it was hard for me. Again, I always think, okay, mother or husband. I thought I had to make a choice, taking care of my mother or being with my husband. But I realized that we're in it together, and the choice is really coming together and figuring out how we're going to support my mother and give her the help that she needs. So that was really an important choice that it took me a while to realize, because, you know, I love my husband, but I thought I had to pick.
But I think the question that you were asking was, and the question that is on all our minds is, when do I move my loved one outside the home? When is that going to happen? If that's going to be part of my journey. So maybe just, because I know we have another question, maybe you can just, in a sentence or two, when was that decision made? Or was it made for you?
Well, in a way it was. The stages of decline continued to happen. And once she got to the point where she was incontinent, couldn't walk anymore, couldn't really feed herself. So even though, and could no longer go to daycare, which is what really allowed us to have some semblance of a life, you know, then even though we were bringing caregivers into the home, you know, morning and afternoon, this sort of thing, just became overwhelming.
The caregivers are angels. I just cannot say it enough. People that, by choice, make the choice to get into this business are my hero and heroines. It really is a hard job. And I have a lady that still helps me to this day, even though my mother's in a was a deciding factor. She was very difficult to handle, and keeping her home all day, I just did not feel that that was fair for her, being at home all day by herself when she could be at a facility that at least they had activities every day, had other people. So that's kind of how we made the final decision, and I had already done the footwork. So.
You had a question?
Hi, I was wondering how important or were your doctors helpful in maybe diagnosing early so that affairs could be put in order, or is it what happens in a lot of cases, everything is in an emergency and nothing has really been prepared for? If the panel
Maybe we can
talk
have
on that.
Gwen, would you mind talking about the problems with getting a diagnosis?
My husband, like many, lost his job, and that was the first indication she needed something was wrong. But it took me about 6 months to actually do anything because I thought his problems were due to being laid off. When I finally went to the primary care doctor, he said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we'll send him to the neurologist." It took 2 years. 2 years. And the neurologist got to the point of saying, "I think you should go see a psychiatrist because we can't find anything wrong with you." The psychiatrist called me after my husband went, because my husband was still driving, and said, "I don't think this diagnosis for a psychiatrist is right. Your husband seems content and happy, and he's cracking a joke. So let's send him to a neuropsychologist." And so we went to the neuropsychologist, and the neuropsychologist said, "Oh yes, this could very well be something that I can handle." And I said, "This degree of loss?" She goes, "Oh yes, he's just very, very anxious." So he went faithfully for about 2 months, and he started saying, "I don't think this is doing me any good." I said, "Well, talk to her. Just tell her what you think." And a couple more weeks, he says, "This is not doing me any good." And so we stopped. And then I finally said, "Okay, that's it. We need to go to someplace special for the diagnosis." And the health care that I had at that point sent us to Stanford. Although I asked for UC San Francisco and Davis, they sent us to Stanford. But once we got to Stanford, 2 visits. I think it took 2 visits for a diagnosis. And that's it. But that whole process took 2 years. And as you mentioned, not knowing is very, very stressful. Yes, we got the diagnosis. It wasn't a diagnosis I was looking for. I was hoping it was something that could be at least somewhat treated. But knowing what the diagnosis is can help you make plans. So it's not always an easy trip, even to get to that point of diagnosis. And he was young. So, they weren't thinking at 57 that this probably was Alzheimer's. Even though the neurologist that we worked with, his mother had Alzheimer's. So we thought, oh, this is great, because her mother has Alzheimer's, she knows exactly what to look for. But her mother was in Greece, so she wasn't living with her mother. So theoretically, and she knew what some of the symptoms were, etc., but it was not the same as if you're living with someone and seeing it. So that's probably why it took a little bit longer.
I have a follow-up question. Maybe it's just for the entire panel. Back on kind of seeing that we're on the medical side of diagnosis. How do you feel about the level that you have to put into working with your loved one's doctor, being an advocate for your loved one through the medical field, within the medical field?
Because of the type of disease it is, you do have to be an advocate for your loved one, because your loved one's mind is already not working at 100%. So I went to every meeting, every appointment. I was the one that asked the questions. I was the one that was on the internet. Of course, he was one of those that didn't want to tell anyone. Even after we got the diagnosis, he was ashamed. There's some stigma with this, and he was ashamed, and I tried to talk to him. But yes, definitely, the loved one has to be the advocate, because even in the early stages, if the person with Alzheimer's goes to the doctor and the doctor says, "You got to do this and this and this, and I'm going to prescribe this and this and this," you can never be sure how much they're going to remember. I'm never sure how much I'm going to remember. I take notes. Did the doctor really say that, or did they say, maybe later we shall? So I would go to the doctor with my notepad, with my questions, and then the answers. You want to say anything?
Heather, can I speak to this?
Yes.
So, can everybody hear me? I have a special mic, I don't know. Because I'm on the end, I guess. In response to your question, at the time my mom was diagnosed, I am an attorney and I was still practicing, and right away, when she was diagnosed, I went to an attorney. I took my mom with me to an attorney, and she was still able to answer questions about how she was able to participate in her own care planning at that point. And I think that helped her with the diagnosis, processing the diagnosis, and we had some really honest conversations, and she was able to tell me what she wanted. Also, at the time, because she was single, she was the trustee of her trust, and so she made me trustee of her trust, and I put all the durable powers of attorney in place for financial management and for health care. So I do think early diagnosis is really important, and as hard as it is to have those frank conversations with your family members, that's really your window of opportunity. And so I would encourage everyone to do that.
As far as plan for the future and get the durable power of attorney of medical and financial.
Yes, at that time. So did you have to conserve your mom?
I had to.
Did you have to go through the courts to do that?
Yes.
So that's the thing. It can be a really time-consuming and expensive process to go through the courts. So you have to do it when they're in early stage and can still communicate their wishes. It really helped. I will say, 6 years diagnosis to death, I was really able to manage my mom's care because I had all the documentation in place. It can be really hard when you don't. Yeah.
I was going to say that you're so lucky because, and that was sort of my point, that if the doctor were to tell you early on that you have this diagnosis and please take care of your affairs, how helpful would that be? And that's what we were trying to push the doctors I work for. They don't want to tell the patient, but they don't want to break it to them. They don't want to say it again, and that
I'm going to repeat it.
Opportunity only to get it done before the person will say, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't have Alzheimer's.
So what she was saying was the importance of the medical community. I'm going to paraphrase, is that okay? The medical community is knowledgeable and willing to give a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease early in the disease process, so the person that is diagnosed with the disease can participate in the planning for the future, whether planning financially, planning medically, what their wishes are. I talk about this a lot when I'm working with families and at support groups. Sharon and Edmund and Gwen can attest that I won't stop talking about planning for the future, as much as difficult as it is, because we don't like talking about it. We don't like thinking about it. But we don't want to be faced in a situation where we don't know where the wills are. We don't know where the money is. We don't know what mom and dad wants. I don't know what my husband wants. So it's really extremely, or you can't make that decision because you don't have any legal rights to make that decision. And then you have to go through the courts to get that. And it's expensive, it's timely, and it's another stressor that you don't need in your lives. So if you're able to do it now, if you're able to plan now, or even if you haven't planned when the person was first diagnosed, it's not too late to get the ball rolling. I'm going to take 2 questions. Sure, Edmund?
Yeah, I just want to say something while we're still talking about the medical part. It's about drugs. The kind of agitation that her mother was experiencing was really challenging. The tendency in the medical profession, however, is to just sedate these people into a stupor, and this sort of thing. And Sharon was adamantly against that, and I really commend her for that, because these drugs frequently aren't going to really help anything. You know, and in fact, after they get over a certain period, they can't come back from being sedated the way that you and I might if we genuinely needed to be sedated for a good reason. So I would caution you very strongly against letting your loved ones be sedated just because they're easier to handle or deal with. Because our experience was, you know, she ended up with tremors, she ended up with various other stuff. Yep, actually, you know, blacking out and that sort of thing. And then one more thing about the drug stuff, which is that these companies that pay for the drugs are no good. You know, and you have to do battle with them all the time. They say, well, it's not in the formulary. Well, and then we changed the formulary now, and so now the drug that you've been using, well, you can't use that anymore because we're not going to pay for it. And that's what happened to us. They changed the formulary for one of her medications, and we were forced to give her a different medication, and it sent her into a downward spiral. So, anyway, just be careful.
So I know we have a question back here.
So my question is, in our situation, our mom, we are the ones choosing not to tell, so far, not to tell my mom that she's been diagnosed. The doctor has diagnosed her. We just had an appointment with her yesterday again to check her out, and we feel as a family that she couldn't handle knowing that she has dementia, Alzheimer's, and we've chosen not to tell her. And yesterday confirmed it for me because we were in the doctor's office, and we had talked to the social worker that we want to just tell mom that yes, she's experiencing, you know, memory loss, and she is 75. And apparently the social worker didn't tell my mom. Didn't tell the doctor, and the doctor kept going, yes, she has dementia. And the minute my mom heard dementia, her eyes just went down, her face expressions were totally like, I thought she was going to start to cry. And so I had to, she speaks Spanish and English, of course, but in Spanish I said, you know, mom, you know, this is normal. You know, you're 75, we start to, you know, to forget things. We do have all the financial aspects for her because she's never really handled her finances. After my dad passed away, we kind of took over and she signed all that even before the diagnosis. But, you know, I guess for me, you know, I hear, you know, the person with the disease knows. And to me, I wish I could, my mom was the type that, you know, like the gentleman's wife, that she participates and goes, but I don't think my mom, in her case, could handle that. And I don't know how the people handle that situation. Because for us, for knowing my mom the way she is, doesn't seem like she could handle the fact that she knows that she has this disease.
Does anybody? I don't know if I can answer that question, but I'll try to respond to it unless somebody on the panel. No, I get turfed to me. So, you know, I think it's a family's decision. It's your decision whether or not you want to let your mom know. I've worked with a few families that haven't told the person about the diagnosis for that same reason or similar reasons or other reasons why they didn't want to share the diagnosis. Sometimes it's just easier to provide the care that's needed, and it might cause an extra stressor in your life or anybody's life who's kind of on that fence of whether or not they're going to tell the person. And sometimes knowing what's going on and having a name for it can be very empowering for the person that has a diagnosis to kind of figure out what's going on with them. And I think everybody will attest, and people in the room will attest to the fact that Alzheimer's disease doesn't define who that person is, right? It's something that they have, but they're still who they are at that moment in time. Your mom is still that person that you love. You're always going to love your mom, but the disease doesn't define who she is. And if she's very independent now, it's in the early stages of the disease.
No, it's very early. She recognizes everyone. She does all of her own stuff. We went through the whole questionnaire of is there depression? No. So, you know, for us, she's still mom, and my sister and I talk. If she continues like this for the next 10 years, we're happy because at least she recognizes us. And she's still doing the things. It's just, you know, knowing. I wish I could tell her this is what you have because she's still mom. But the way she reacted to the doctor saying dementia, you could see the change in her facial expression instantly. And then she's trying to to me saying, but you know, but I still do all my things, I don't leave things on. She's telling me all these things, like trying to explain herself, and I'm like, no, you're fine, you know.
She's grasping onto that independence, saying, I still can do these things. And what's important is that you acknowledge, yeah, you can still do these things. And that's what's important. Again, it's your family's decision, and it's going to be everybody's own decision when they're going to tell, if they're going to tell. Is it even important to let the person know? Sometimes it can cause more problems and not be as helpful.
In my case, we really have tried to lead as much of a normal life as we could, as we did before. And we've traveled a lot in the last 3 years. The last trip was difficult, but we have traveled a lot, and you can see a steady decline. But she's enjoyed as much as we've traveled, and so I've really made an effort to continue to lead as much of a normal, quote unquote, normal life as possible. And so there is hope. I mean, it's not the end of the world. And I tell people that have been other family members, it's not the end of the world when you get the diagnosis. You can lead. It's not the same life, but it's as much normal as you can.
I actually have a question about the kind of support. I mean, you touched on this a little bit about increasing your family support, increasing your social support, talking to people that also are experiencing this disease or living with this disease. Can you, all of you, everyone on the panel, just briefly go by one and talk about what type of support do you get and the value of that support for you?
And we talk about this in our support group. The people who really understand what I'm going through are people in my support group. They are the ones that get it. The friends, they don't understand because they're not dealing with it. And so, I mean, we're totally open with people in our support group. We tell them everything, and I get a lot of wonderful feedback from that. But friends, we have to be careful. We don't go too far down below the surface of what I'm really feeling at this point in time. And so that's where I get my support, is from the support group and the people who are dealing. They know they're dealing with it in their own life, and so that's where I get my help.
Same for us. The support has been from the Family Alliance as well as the Alzheimer's Association. They have groups all over the East Bay. That's where we live, and so I was going to 2 groups as well as individual for my husband and myself. Counseling with the family, Heather, and that has been a lifeline to keep us grounded.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me is that you don't know what you don't know about this, even when you're in it. And so, if you just described being with people who are having a similar experience, and they can be exceptionally helpful. But what else it does is it helps us to speak to those other people, like the friends and the family, about how to interact with this person. They're going to see a change in that, in their loved one's behavior, and that they won't be able to really recognize. But if we can give them, for instance, the book, I think it's called the 36. Yeah. That
1300-hour day.
Yeah.
That book's tremendous, and other information like that about how to relate to somebody who has Alzheimer's. Because if you continue to try to behave as if they can understand everything you're saying, and they should relate in a some sort of linear fashion and that sort of thing, it can be very frustrating. So the kind of help it's given us to be able to teach other people how to relate to them has been really good.
36-hour day. And don't read it like a novel. Don't read it like a trash novel. Go through, read it for all night long. But you can use it as an index. It's got a great index and reference section. Gwen?
Same here. I started searching out support groups before my husband got his diagnosis. I searched it out maybe 6 months before because I knew there was something wrong, and I was stressed and I needed help. The support group that I found became my lifeline. There were times when I couldn't wait for that next monthly meeting just because of the stress I was under. And it's true. Unless you're going through it, they don't understand. Your family doesn't understand, your friends don't understand, coworkers don't understand. And I was lucky enough to change jobs, and there was a coworker whose mother had Alzheimer's. And so we would sometimes get to work and cry on each other's shoulders because of what we had to do before we got to work. One of the things I learned in the Savvy Caregivers class with Heather was how to ask for help. A lot of us don't want to ask for help. We think we're strong. We think that we can just do it by ourselves. And I was very, very guilty of that. And not only how to ask for help, but how to accept the level of help people are willing to give you. So I said, okay, my husband's siblings all live in Southern California. I'm going to ask them to just call him. Just call him on a regular basis. They don't, but I felt better that I at least asked. Asking neighbors not maybe to sit with your loved one, but maybe go pick up a dry cleaning for you. Or go pick up something at the store, or, can you come over with a cup of sugar? Because I need to make something, and not even having to go to their house to ask for a cup of sugar. I joined the second group, the early onset group in Berkeley. And between those three, the two support groups and the Savvy Caregivers class, I found the support that I need. And with friends at the group, you can bitch and complain, and they know why you're so upset or why you're so angry. Others won't get it.
So I was only 32 when my mom was diagnosed, and I had these 9-month-old twin baby boys, and I had a third baby during the time from diagnosis to death. And so I have wonderful, wonderful friends, but no one was going through, they were having babies and raising their kids, and I was in this unique kind of sandwich zone of taking care of my mom and raising my babies. But I have a really wonderful support group, great family and friends. I didn't find the association through a support group. I found the association through the Walk to End Alzheimer's. At that time it was called Memory Walk. I was sitting in an ice cream store with my husband and my 3 boys one day, and I saw a flyer. My mom was about 1.5 years from death. I didn't know it at the time, but she was pretty far along. And I said, I'm going to do this. And I showed up to the walk. It was at Treasure Island at that time, and caregiving can be so isolating. And I got there, I didn't know what to expect, and I saw all these people, the energy. It really looked like a movement to end Alzheimer's, and it really inspired me. I didn't feel alone. I felt like, wow, there's a lot of other people facing this disease, and I felt empowered to be out there with them. And there was an advocacy table there, because we do have a big advocacy network. The association has, 500,000 advocates across the country. And with my attorney background, I thought this might be a good place where I could add value. But really, I want to tell you don't have to be an attorney to be an advocate. It is about just telling your personal story, raising public awareness, educating your neighbors, your friends, about the disease. The more people know about it, the less there will be a stigma. The more people know about it, the more people will care about it. The more our legislators know, the more hopefully they'll fund research into a cure. And again, it's not wonky politics. It's showing up and telling your legislator what your experience has been and why you care about the disease and why they should care about the disease. So that's how I've been a part of the association, and it's been really empowering for me when you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's and you're watching them fade away. Yeah, you feel so powerless, And this was a way to feel a little bit of power over the situation, or feel like I was making some sort of difference. And I always say that I am an advocate with the association because I'm trying to help, create a world without Alzheimer's, which is their mission and their vision, to honor my mom's memory and for my 3 young boys. So everybody, go out to the Walk to End Alzheimer's, sign up to be an advocate, join a support group. The association's such an amazing place.
Well, thanks for the plug.